thank you so much to the GCSP for inviting me in. One of the things I really appreciate about this family is that we have so many different perspectives, so many different angles and lenses that we can bring together. And I think that's fundamental if we want to have a positive change coming out of this particular crisis. What I wanted to do is bring it down a little bit to the practical level and give you a taste of what's operationally happening in Somalia at the moment, and then speak a little bit more about where I think there needs to be some radical change in how we approach our analytical capabilities. And maybe, if I have time, a couple of quick points on some of the experiences of having moved to this telecommuting world that we have. And so just really, I guess, to remind people, Somalia at the moment is a place in absolute flux, as it has been for some time. Ongoing challenges with poverty, weak health systems, the largest locust swarm in 70 years. I think floods in the last month have displaced an additional 400,000 people. There are ongoing community divisions at the village and at the state and federal level. You have upcoming elections that are again disputed. Al-Shabaab has an ongoing presence and ability to control areas and people, and you have COVID-19. So it's a crisis that has maybe hit us in the West in a powerful way because it's changed our fundamental lives. It's an additional challenge to most of the places where we have peacekeeping operations deployed. So just to bring that perspective, at the moment, and this again speaks massively to where Somalia is in their development stage, they have some 2,200 recorded cases, and I think still under 80 recorded deaths. But the big question is, what's their capacity to even monitor these things? Many of our countries are discovering recording deaths in real time is a huge logistical challenge, and something that places like Somalia, with all of their other issues, are really going to struggle to have an accurate idea of how that's happening, and certainly not possible in real time. As Jean-Marc mentioned, at the moment, I'm working as the coordinator with the panel of experts on Somalia, which is one of the Security Council tools that's deployed in the sanctions area. And we have a lot of crossovers in the priorities and issues that we deal with as compared to either the political mission or the Amazon mission. And again, to give some concrete examples of what we're working on at the moment, it's largely focused around the adaptability of Al-Shabaab during this period. Al-Shabaab has always been an organization known for its adaptability, and one that those trying to build a peaceful Somalia have tried to keep up with. And this is the range of things that we see them exploiting at the moment. One is financial flows. This is a very well organized business as well as ideological model, and how they are able to adapt and analyze what is happening and where the opportunities are to exploit financial flows is very, very interesting. There is clearly an increased freedom of movement for actors such as this. The operational tempo of peacekeeping missions has been impacted and has to be impacted, both in terms of their internal health and safety, but also from the realities of pauses in troop rotations and trying to reorganize their work. As impressive as the job they're doing, there is an impact. But it's not only inside Somalia that the freedom of movement is increased. Whilst we're tending to be spending a lot of time at home or in lockdowns, movements of foreign fighters are more on the increase as those patrols are less. So we're certainly monitoring who's looking to move into the country and what skills and expertise they may be looking to spread within the country as well. Propaganda and disinformation. The communication side, Annika has already alluded to it, it's enormous. The flexibility and ability to adapt and communicate with communities in a way that absolutely resonates is something that all countries facing terrorism or insurgency movements face. And it's absolutely something that is happening on the ground today in Somalia. Huge challenges. And in the midst of that, AMISOM has negotiated their new mandate last Friday, and I think we can probably find some really interesting lessons learnt from that process as we consider moving forward in adaptability. The reason I wanted to talk about some of those practical ideas is just to highlight the breadth of understanding that those of us operating in these environments need to have. I've talked about financial sectors, I've talked about health and health systems, agricultural issues, counterterrorism issues, communications and propaganda issues. There is an awful lot that we're asking our peacekeepers to understand and react to be effective in their work. It's something that requires an increased perspective, I think. And this is maybe an area where we've understood for some time that it's not a strength, but the impetus that might be able to come from this kind of crisis to really take us up a level is a great opportunity. If we talk about reporting, UN organizations are very strong at reporting. I think we're getting better and better at data collection. If you look at the opportunities we have, and I'm sure others will talk more to this, with new technologies to gather this information, there's been huge advances. Where we can still make, I think, some very big improvements is how do we ensure that we have the multiple lenses that I've mentioned coming to give us the understanding? How do we make sure that we have a longitudinal and dynamic understanding of what's happening in these environments? Common country analysis is something that I think's got people a lot more on the same page in a UN country team context, but maybe not something that is able to give us the dynamism that we need in ongoing conflicts. We also need, thinking about that, to look at what information do we want in a public UN document with all of the political realities that involves, and what information do our decision makers need to operate in these environments. So we need to have multiple levels of information flow, multiple audiences. I don't think this is something that we should be asking peacekeeping missions to do on their own. It's not something that they have that breadth of understanding. They don't have historians, economists, anthropologists all within their teams. And the more that we all sit within that kind of an environment, the more we start, I think, to think in a similar way. So I would propose that we look at bringing this different view also from the outside, needing to find ways that the peacekeeping budget still invests, because it doesn't come without a cost, and also that the peacekeeping hierarchy feels an ownership of. So I think they're particular challenges, but ones that we can find ways to overcome. One of the things that young analysts, particularly in missions, be they military missions, peacekeeping missions, tell me is they're not connected to the decision makers. That's something we need to change. And one of the key ways to do that is to ensure that our decision makers, and that's at the strategic, operation and tactical levels, are asking really good questions and commissioning very useful analysis, not simply looking at monitoring, not only coping with the reports they need to cope with every day, but also having a forward-looking aspect to that. So I think there's an opportunity, given the kinds of changes and the pace that we've been able to make change at during these last 3 months, to really re-look at some of these issues that have sometimes felt too hard. And I think that's something that we should look at. And just very quickly, because I know we have a lot of speakers, I wanted to touch on one of the classic lessons learned that will come from this period is how well we've all been able to adapt to webinars and to remote working. what we need, I think, to do is also be very honest and look at where that doesn't work. Where do we need to prioritize face-to-face interactions? Because this is a large part of how we do business and what the footprint of missions will look like on the ground. And there are certain areas where face-to-face is absolutely required. There are others, and we're learning, where it's not quite as essential. Certainly some of the analytical capacities that I've been talking about do not need to be sitting physically on the ground in the mission. And if that can free up resources for those that need to get beyond the compound and interact with the communities, civil society and governments, then that would be a resource very well spent. But I think I would leave it on a positive note that the amount of adaptation that's happened over these months is massively impressive and something that we need to build on, both in terms of attitude and substance. Thank you.